I never thought my parents would drag me into a courtroom. I never thought my mother would look at me like I was a stranger. I never thought my father would raise his hand and swear an oath just to lie about me. But that is exactly what happened after I bought the house I worked 6 years to afford. People think the worst betrayals happen during arguments. Loud voices, slammed doors, broken plates. Mine did not. Mine started on a quiet morning with a text that said, "Congratulations." Then another that said, "We are so proud of you." Then a final one that opened a door I never knew I would walk through. A door that led straight into a legal fight with my own family. I grew up with parents who adored my sister. Celeste was the favorite. I was the background character. I accepted it without a fight for most of my life. I worked. I studied. I followed rules. Celeste broke them. They still clapped for her. I learned early that attention in my house belonged to one person, not me, so I focused on work. I saved every extra dollar. I stayed late at the office. I turned down trips and nights out because I wanted something that could not be taken from me. A home. A place where I could breathe without feeling small. A place where the walls did not echo with comparisons. It took 6 years. 6 long years of budgeting and tracking every cent, 6 years of quiet mornings where I made coffee at home instead of stopping at a cafe. 6 years of skipping vacations and saying no to anything that cost more than it offered. Then one day I found it. A 2-story brick house with a small porch and a yard that caught the morning sunlight. It was not luxurious. It was not huge, but it felt like freedom. I called the real estate agent and put in an offer the same day. When it was accepted, I cried in my car. Not loud crying, just steady tears. Relief. Pride. Something I never felt in my parents' house. I told my friends first. They cheered. They offered to help pack. They asked for photos. They made me feel seen. I told my parents next. I should have known the shift in tone would come quickly. At first, they acted happy. My mother sent a long text full of heart emojis. My father wrote a stiff but polite "Congratulations, you worked hard." Celeste only replied with a single sentence. Must be nice to buy without help. I ignored it. I knew her tone. She always hated when I accomplished something she could not claim as hers. 2 days later, the storm hit. I came home from work and saw my phone filled with notifications. Missed calls, voice messages, a text from a number I did not know, another from a law office. I opened the email that sat at the top of the inbox. A formal notice, a statement of claim. A lawsuit filed by my parents and my sister. They stated that the house I bought belonged to Celeste. They claimed it had been promised to her through a family inheritance. They demanded immediate transfer of ownership and compensation for their emotional distress. I sat on the couch and stared at the screen. My hands shook so hard I could barely hold the phone. I read the document again and again. My heart felt heavy in my chest. I kept thinking there had to be some mistake, a misprint, a wrong name. But no, it was real. My parents had filed a legal case against me. I called my mother first. She answered quickly, almost too quickly. "Eloise, this is not personal." That was the first thing she said. Not hello, not we should talk. She sounded calm, practiced, like she had rehearsed it. I asked her what she was talking about. She sighed, the way she always sighed when she thought I was being dramatic. She said the house was meant for Celeste. She said I knew that. She said the family had discussed it years ago. It was a lie. No such discussion ever happened. I asked her to explain. She said Celeste needed a stable place. She said Celeste deserved it. She said I already had enough in life. She said the house had sentimental value. I could hear Celeste in the background, laughing. I hung up. I did not yell. I did not cry. I sat in silence for a long time. My phone buzzed again. A new message. This time from Celeste. "You bought the house I wanted. I am taking it." Those words woke something inside me. A line I had never crossed before. A limit. A boundary. A feeling that said enough. I called my friend Mia. I needed someone to steady me. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she told me to see a lawyer. She said it was not a fight I had to face alone. The next day, I walked into a small law office downtown. The walls were lined with old case files. The place smelled like coffee and paper. My attorney, Mr. Granger, was calm and methodical. He listened as I explained everything. He took notes. He asked for every document connected to the house. He asked about my family. He asked about Celeste. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and looked at me with steady eyes. This claim has no basis. His voice was firm. It is fabricated. You have nothing to fear, but we need to prepare. He told me that cases like this could still drag on for months. He said my parents could twist stories. He said Celeste could lie. He said their attorney would try to pressure me into settling. I felt sick thinking about it, but I nodded. I gathered every bank statement, every contract, every text that proved I bought the house with my money. I spoke with my aunt and uncle, who told me something I never expected. My father had tried to change the grandparents years ago. He wanted everything left to Celeste. They stopped him. Their testimony would later become one of the most important pieces of the case. But at that moment, I was still standing inside a storm I did not understand. All I knew was that my family wanted to take the one thing I worked years to earn. And I decided for the first time in my life that I would not let them. I moved into my house while the lawsuit was still fresh. Every box I unpacked felt heavier than it should. Every room felt like a battlefield. I kept thinking someone would knock on the door and tell me I had to leave. The fear stayed in my chest for days, like a tight fist around my lungs. But I forced myself to settle in. I painted the living room. I planted small flowers near the porch. I tried to build something calm inside a moment filled with chaos. Then the real attack started. My mother called every evening. Sometimes she cried. Sometimes she lectured. Sometimes she told me I misunderstood the situation. She said I was hurting the family. She said Celeste was devastated. She said I needed to apologize. I kept the calls short. I told her everything needed to go through my lawyer. She hated that. My father sent long messages filled with legal terms he did not understand. He repeated the same false story about an inheritance. He said I was disrespecting the family legacy. He said I was being selfish. He said he could not believe I would fight him in court. Celeste did not bother with pretending. She sent voice notes telling me the house had her name on it spiritually. She said the universe meant it for her. She said I stole it. She said she deserved everything I had because she was the one who made our parents proud. I blocked her after the 5th message. Then something happened that changed the direction of the case. One evening, around 9, I heard a noise outside. A quick metallic sound. A car door. Then footsteps. I peeked through the window and saw Celeste standing. In my driveway. She was holding something metallic in her hand. When she raised it toward the back door, I realized what it was. A lock-picking tool. I froze. She actually tried to break in. I stayed quiet and called the police. They arrived fast. Celeste panicked and tried to run, but they stopped her. She kept shouting that it was her house, that she was taking back what belonged to her. The officers took statements and wrote everything down. That police report would later destroy her credibility in court. When the officers left, I sat on the floor and cried. Not because I was scared, because something inside me broke cleanly. A final crack in the illusion that my family cared about me. The next morning, I took the police report straight to Mr. Granger. He looked at it, then nodded with quiet certainty. This will help us. She crossed a legal line. It was the first time since the lawsuit started that I felt a small wave of relief. The next few weeks dragged on slowly. My parents refused to back down. Their attorney filed more documents. They added new claims. They accused me of manipulating them. They said I tricked them into believing I was buying a house for the family. They said I promised to give it to Celeste. Lies, all of them. I kept gathering evidence. Bank records, emails, screenshots, documents that showed I worked for everything I owned. My aunt and uncle stayed in close contact. They told me more details about the will my father tried to alter. They said he had a habit of bending facts to benefit Celeste. They said they would support me in court. Their support became a lifeline. I also leaned on my friends more than I ever had. Mia came over with groceries. Daniel helped fix a loose cabinet in the kitchen. Friends from work dropped off meals on days when the stress made it hard to eat. They reminded me that family was not always blood. Meanwhile, my parents started posting vague messages on social media. They wrote about betrayal. They wrote about ungrateful children. They wrote about losing property that was rightfully theirs. They hinted at legal battles, and people in their circle believed them. Strangers wrote hurtful comments on my old posts. Some even messaged me directly. I stopped opening notifications. I told Mr. Granger about the posts. He told me not to engage. He said the court cared about evidence, not gossip. Weeks turned into months. The hearing date drew closer. My parents sent a settlement offer. They wanted me to transfer the deed to Celeste and move out within 30 days. In exchange, they said they would drop all charges. I laughed when I read it, a short, sharp laugh. It was the moment I realized they believed their own lies. They thought I would fold. I rejected the offer without hesitation. 2 days later, my mother showed up at my house uninvited. She stood on the porch with a sorrowful expression, holding a small tin of cookies like it was a peace offering. I did not open the door fully. She tried to step inside. I blocked her. She said the family was hurting. She said I needed to think about Celeste's future. She said I should not force this into a courtroom. She said I was embarrassing them. I looked at her and said something I had never said before. You are the ones doing this, not me. She blinked, stunned. Silence stretched between us. For the first time in my life, she did not have a quick reply. She left without another word. The night before the court hearing, I barely slept. I sat on the couch, looking at the walls I had painted myself. Walls they tried to claim. I kept remembering the long years of saving, the early mornings, the sacrifices, the moments I chose discipline over comfort. This house was more than property. It was proof I had built a life without their help, proof they could not stand. I took a deep breath and reminded myself of every person who supported me. I reminded myself that truth was on my side. I reminded myself that Celeste tried to break into the house she said was hers. The morning of the hearing arrived quietly. No dramatic sunrise, no symbolic sky, just a heavy stillness as I put on my clothes and looked at myself in the mirror. I was done being quiet. I was done being the easy daughter. I was done shrinking so my sister could shine. I walked into the courthouse with my head high, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was walking toward something instead of away from it. The courthouse felt colder than I expected. Bright lights, hard floors, voices echoing off the walls. I sat between Mia and Mr. Granger while my parents sat across the aisle with their attorney. Celeste sat between them, arms crossed, chin raised like she was preparing for a magazine cover. She did not look at me, not once. The judge entered. Everyone stood. My heart beat fast, but my spine stayed straight. I reminded myself that everything on my side was real. My documents, my financial records, my witnesses, my police report. Their case was built on a lie. The hearing began with my parents' attorney. He spoke with confidence. He said the house belonged to Celeste through a promised inheritance. He said I knew about the plan. He said I bought the property using funds tied to the family estate. He said I betrayed an agreement. I listened to every word. Lies. Every single one. I watched my parents nod along, as if they believed their own story. Watching my mother place her hand on her heart made something inside me twist. Not pain. Recognition. This was who she always was. I simply refused to see it until now. When their attorney finished, the judge turned to ours. Mr. Granger stood calmly. He laid out my bank statements. He showed each deposit. He explained my savings plan. He showed that every cent used to buy the house came from my income. He presented the police report documenting Celeste's attempted break-in. He introduced the written statements from my aunt and uncle. Then he called them into the courtroom. My aunt spoke first. Her voice was clear and steady. She explained the real will. She explained the equal split. She explained my father's attempt to pressure them into giving everything to Celeste. She explained how they refused. Every sentence chipped away at the story my parents had built. My uncle followed. He confirmed everything. He added details about meetings, phone calls, and documents my father tried to draft. He said under oath that my parents repeatedly favored Celeste and tried to rewrite family history to keep everything in her hands. I watched my father's expression tighten. My mother looked down at her hands. Celeste glared at the table, jaw clenched. Then Mr. Granger introduced the police report. The judge read it slowly. When he finished, he looked directly at Celeste. "Did you attempt to enter the house without permission?" The room held its breath. Celeste shifted in her seat. She said she was checking on her future property. She said she thought the lock was broken. She said she did not know the police would arrive. The judge asked again. Her answer did not change. It only sounded weaker. Then it was my turn. I walked to the stand. My hands trembled, but my voice was steady. I told the truth. I told how I saved for 6 years. I told how I was never informed of any inheritance. I told how my parents congratulated me at first. I told how the lawsuit blindsided me. I told how Celeste messaged me saying she was taking the house. I told how they demanded I give up the deed. I told how I lived my whole life in the shadow of a sister who could do no wrong. I told the judge that this house was the first thing I ever earned fully on my own. When I finished, I felt a weight lift from my chest, a weight I carried since childhood. The judge leaned back and took a moment, a long one. Then he spoke. There is no evidence of an inheritance. There is no agreement. There is no claim to this property by anyone except the legal owner, which is Eloise. My breath caught. The room blurred for a second. My parents remained still. Celeste froze like a statue. The judge continued. This case is dismissed with prejudice. The claims lack merit. The attempt by Celeste to enter the property without permission is noted. The court will not tolerate fabricated legal action. Those words were a final closure. Sharp, clean, unavoidable. We walked out of the courtroom. My legs felt light. My hands shook, but in a different way. Relief. After months of fear and pressure and manipulation, the truth had cut through everything. My parents followed me into the hallway. They looked different, smaller, as if the weight of their lies finally pressed down on them. My mother spoke first. Her voice trembled. You did not have to make this so public. I looked at her, really looked. For the first time, I saw her without the lens of hope or longing. Just a woman who chose her favorite child so completely that she lost the other. I told her the only truth that mattered. You chose this. I protected myself. My father tried to speak, but the words fell apart in his mouth. Celeste stared at me with pure disbelief, like she could not understand how the world did not bend for her this time. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I told them I needed distance. I told them contact was no longer welcome. I told them the house was mine and always would be. Then I walked away. When I got home that evening, the sunset hit the porch in soft colors. I stood there for a long time. The house felt different, not like a place I was fighting for, a place I could finally live in. I made myself tea and sat in the living room. The quiet felt peaceful, steady. I sent a message to my aunt and uncle thanking them. I called Mia. I let myself breathe. I thought about the word family. I realized it did not have to come from blood. It could be chosen. It could be built. It could look like people who show up without expecting anything. People who stand beside you when the house you earned is under attack. People who remind you that you are worth the fight. I looked around the room I painted myself. The room they tried to take. The room that stood untouched by their lies. For the first time in my life, the space around me felt like it belonged to me without question. I felt ownership. I felt peace. I felt free.